The stars looked different this far from Earth. Captain Daniel Harper stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the swirling colors of the Kepler 442 system fill the main screen. He had been in space for 12 years, but this moment felt special. His crew was about to make first contact with an alien civilization that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Daniel was a tall man with dark hair and tired eyes. At 42 years old, he had seen enough of space to know that humanity was still young and small in a very big universe. His uniform was clean but worn at the edges. He preferred function over style, and his crew respected him for it. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," said Amy Brooks from the tactical station. She was young, only 26, with red hair tied back in a tight bun. Her fingers moved quickly across her console. "It's in multiple languages. They're asking us to hold position." "Understood." "Full stop," Daniel ordered. He felt his heart beat faster. Everything they did now would be studied by historians for centuries. One wrong move could doom humanity's chances of joining the galactic community. The alien ship appeared like a ghost, materializing from nothing. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The vessel seemed to be made of crystal and light, constantly shifting and shimmering. It was 3 times the size of the horizon's edge, and sensors showed technology that humanity could barely understand. "They're requesting permission to board," Amy said, her voice steady despite the tension. Daniel looked at Elizabeth Morris, his chief science officer and oldest friend. She was a small woman with gray streaks in her black hair, though she was only 39. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity behind her glasses. "This is what we came for," Elizabeth said quietly. "Let's make history," Daniel nodded. "Grant them permission." "Amy, you're with me." Elizabeth Peter prepared the docking bay. 10 minutes later, Daniel stood in the docking bay with his senior staff. The airlock hissed open, and the Velinar delegation entered. There were 5 of them, and they moved with a grace that seemed almost like floating. Their bodies were tall and slender, with skin that looked like it was made from living crystal. Light seemed to flow under their surface, creating patterns that changed with every movement. But it was the lead diplomat who captured Daniel's attention completely. She was slightly shorter than her companions, and her crystalline skin held shades of blue and silver. When she looked at him, her eyes were like looking into deep water lit by moonlight. "I am Lyrana," she said. Her voice was like music with harmonics that Daniel felt in his chest as much as heard with his ears. "I speak for the Velinar High Council. We welcome humanity to the greater galaxy." Daniel stepped forward and offered his hand, hoping the gesture would translate. "I'm Captain Daniel Harper. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we're honored to meet you." Lyrana looked at his extended hand for a moment, then reached out and took it. Her touch was cool and sent a small tingle through his arm. For just a second, Daniel felt something pass between them. A connection, a recognition. Then the moment was gone, and Lyrana released his hand. The following weeks became a blur of meetings, exchanges, and careful diplomatic dancing. The Velinar were polite but distant. They had rules for everything, and they made it clear that humanity was being evaluated. One mistake could close the door to the stars forever, but Lyrana was different. While her fellow diplomats maintained cold professionalism, she asked questions. She wanted to know about human art, human music, human dreams. She spent hours in the observation deck, watching Earth videos and asking Elizabeth to explain human culture. Daniel found himself drawn to these sessions. At first, he told himself it was his duty as captain to facilitate cultural exchange, but he knew the truth. He enjoyed talking to Lyrana. He enjoyed the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. He enjoyed the way her skin patterns changed when she was excited or curious. One evening, Daniel found Lyrana alone in the observation deck. She was watching a recording of a human orchestra playing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Tears were running down her crystalline face, though Daniel hadn't known Velinar could cry. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. Lyrana turned to him, and her emotional patterns were visible in the light flowing under her skin. "Your species feels so deeply. We Velinar have spent 10,000 years perfecting order and logic. But listening to this music, I wonder what we lost along the way." Daniel sat down beside her. They watched the rest of the symphony together in silence. When it ended, Lyrana spoke again. "My people have a law," she said. "We do not mix with other species. We believe genetic purity is the foundation of civilization, but sitting here with you, I question that law for the first time in my life. Maybe some laws are meant to be questioned, Daniel said carefully. They talked through the night. Lorana told him about Velinar society, about the rigid rules and the fear of change that had gripped her people for millennia. Daniel shared stories of human history, of how humanity had almost destroyed itself through division before learning to unite. We're not perfect, Daniel admitted. We've made terrible mistakes, but we learned that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. That philosophy would be considered dangerous among my people, Lorana said. What do you consider it? Daniel asked. Lorana's skin patterns shifted into colors Daniel had never seen before. I consider it hopeful. The crisis came 3 weeks into the cultural exchange. A massive solar flare erupted from the system's star, larger than anything the sensors had predicted. Both ships were in danger. The Velinar vessel's shields could protect it, but the horizon's edge would be destroyed. Lorana made a decision that shocked her crew. She ordered her ship to extend its shields to cover the human vessel. It would strain their systems to the breaking point and violate protocols about protecting inferior species at the Velinar's own risk. For 72 hours, Daniel and Lorana worked side by side in the Velinar engineering bay, rerouting power and reinforcing shield harmonics. They barely slept. They barely ate. But they kept both ships alive. When the danger finally passed, they stood together in the quiet engineering bay. They were exhausted. Daniel had a cut on his forehead from a falling panel. Lorana's light patterns were dim from fatigue. You saved my crew, Daniel said. You saved mine, Lorana replied. Your engineering ideas were the difference between survival and failure. They stood close, closer than protocol allowed. Daniel knew he should step back. He knew this was dangerous, but he didn't move. Daniel, Lorana said softly, I am feeling something that we Velinar are taught to never feel, something that is forbidden. I know, Daniel said. I feel it too. This cannot happen. If my people discover this, they will kill us both. They may even see humanity as a threat to eliminate. I know, Daniel repeated. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then Lorana reached out and touched his face. Her cool fingers traced the cut on his forehead, and Daniel felt that same tingle from their first handshake, but stronger now, much stronger. What happened next would change the fate of the galaxy. In that quiet engineering bay, far from Earth and far from the Velinar homeworld, two people from different worlds made a choice. They chose each other. They chose love over law. They chose hope over fear. Neither of them knew that this moment would create a miracle. Neither of them knew that Lorana's biology and human biology could combine in ways that science had never predicted. Neither of them knew that 3 months later, Lorana would discover she was carrying a child that should not exist. But in that moment, they knew only one truth. Some connections are stronger than any law, any rule, any ancient tradition. Some connections are worth fighting for, even if the whole galaxy stands against you. The hybrid child story had begun. 3 months had passed since the solar flare crisis. The horizon's edge had returned to Earth orbit, and the crew was preparing for their next mission. Daniel stood in his quarters, staring at the encrypted message on his personal screen. The words seemed impossible, but he read them again and again. Daniel, I need to see you. Something has happened. Something that should not be possible. Please come alone, Lorana. His hands shook as he deleted the message. Lorana had returned to Velinar space after the cultural exchange ended. They had said goodbye knowing they could never be together again. The risk was too great. But now she was back in human territory, hiding on a civilian station near Mars. Daniel told his crew he needed personal leave for family matters. Elizabeth looked at him with knowing eyes but said nothing. She had been his friend long enough to recognize when he was hiding something important. The civilian station was called Meridian Point, a sprawling collection of modules where traders, miners, and drifters gathered. Daniel wore civilian clothes and kept his head down as he navigated the crowded corridors. He found Lorana in a small rented room in the station's cheapest sector. She looked different. Her crystalline skin was dimmer, her light patterns muted and irregular. When she saw him, relief flooded her features. Lorana, what's wrong? Daniel asked, closing the door behind him. I am with child, she said simply. Your child. Our child, Daniel felt the room spin. That's not possible. We're different species. The biology doesn't work. I thought the same, Lorana said. Her voice trembled, but I have tested 3 times. There is a life growing inside me. A hybrid life, something that has never existed before. Daniel sat down heavily on the narrow bed. His mind raced through the implications. What happens if your people find out? They will execute me for genetic contamination, Lyrana said. They will likely declare humanity a threat and take steps to contain or eliminate your species. And the child, if it survives, will be destroyed as an abomination. We have to hide, Daniel said immediately. Both of you. I'll resign my commission. We'll go somewhere far from both Earth and Velinar space. You would give up everything? Lyrana asked. Your career, your life, for a child you did not plan? Daniel stood and took her hands. I would give up everything for you. For both of you. This child is innocent, and maybe this child is something the galaxy needs even if the galaxy doesn't know it yet. The next week moved quickly. Daniel submitted his resignation, citing exhaustion and a need for civilian life. His superiors tried to change his mind, but he was firm. Elizabeth cornered him the day before his departure. You're running, she said. It wasn't a question. Daniel considered lying, but couldn't. Not to Elizabeth. Yes. Is it the Velinar diplomat, Lyrana? He nodded slowly. Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, You're going to need a doctor. Someone who understands both human and alien biology. Elizabeth, I can't ask you to throw away your career. You're not asking, she said firmly. I'm telling you. If what I think is happening is actually happening, you'll need someone who can help. And Daniel, if a human Velinar hybrid is possible, that's the most important medical discovery in human history. I'm coming with you. They traveled to Haven's Rest, a colony world on the edge of human-controlled space. The planet was home to about 15,000 people, most of them running from something or someone. It was the perfect place to disappear. Daniel and Lyrana rented a small house on the outskirts of the main settlement. Elizabeth found work at the local clinic, which was run by a former military medic named Gregory Stone. He was a big man with a scarred face and gentle hands. He asked few questions and offered help freely. You're not the first person to come here looking for a fresh start, Gregory told them. Haven's Rest doesn't judge. We all have our secrets. Gregory's partner, Linda Hayes, was different. She was sharp-eyed and observant. A former intelligence officer who had left Earth under circumstances she never explained. She took one look at Lyrana and knew she was alien, though Lyrana wore concealing clothes and used makeup to hide her crystalline skin. I don't care what you're hiding, Linda told Daniel one evening, but you should know that people are looking. There are rumors about a Velinar diplomat who disappeared. Some say she was kidnapped by humans. Others say she committed treason. What do you say? Daniel asked carefully. Linda smiled. I say you better be ready to fight when they find you. Because they will find you. They always do. As the weeks passed, Lyrana's pregnancy progressed in ways that fascinated and terrified Elizabeth. The hybrid child was developing faster than a human baby, but slower than a Velinar offspring. Scans showed a brain that was forming neural pathways unlike anything seen in either species. This child is going to be special, Elizabeth told them one night. The brain development suggests enhanced cognitive abilities. And look at this. She pointed to her scanner readings. The child is already responding to both human speech and Velinar harmonics. It's processing both types of communication while still in the womb. Is the child healthy? Lyrana asked. That was always her first question. Perfectly healthy, Elizabeth assured her. Better than healthy. This child is thriving, but danger was coming. Halfway across the galaxy on the crystalline world of Velinor Prime, Commander Vexthar stood before the High Council. He was a warrior, cold and efficient with a reputation for eliminating threats to Velinar purity. The diplomat Lyrana has betrayed us, Vexthar reported. Our intelligence suggests she has formed an inappropriate bond with a human. She has disappeared into their territory. I request permission to retrieve her and eliminate the contamination. The High Council debated. Some argued for caution, fearing conflict with humanity. But the hardliners won. Genetic purity was sacred. Lyrana had violated the most fundamental law. She had to be found and punished. Find her, the council ordered. Bring her back for judgment. As for the human, do what you must, Vexthar bowed. He left the council chamber and immediately began his hunt. He started with the Horizon's Edge crew, questioning them about their captain and his relationship with Lyrana. Most knew nothing, but Vexthar was patient and thorough. He found Peter Grant, the ship's engineer, visiting a supply station. Vexthar's soldiers took Peter to a secure location and questioned him for hours. They used methods that left no physical marks but broke down mental resistance. "Where is Captain Harper?" Vexthar asked again and again. Peter, his mind clouded by pain and exhaustion, finally broke. "I don't know exactly, but Amy Brooks might." She and the captain were close. She might know. Amy Brooks was harder to break. She was a trained tactical officer with resistance training, but Vexthar had centuries of experience. He didn't torture her body. Instead, he threatened the things she loved. Her family on Earth, her younger brother who dreamed of joining the space service. "Tell me where Harper went," Vexthar said softly, "and I will leave your family in peace." Amy held out for 3 days. Then, hating herself, she gave them a clue. "There are rumors. Some of the crew heard him mention Haven's Rest, but I don't know if he actually went there." It was enough. Vexthar immediately mobilized a strike fleet. 5 warships armed and ready, set course for Haven's Rest. The journey would take 3 weeks. On Haven's Rest, Daniel woke from a nightmare. In his dream, he saw ships falling from the sky like burning stars. He got out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake Lirana, and found Linda standing outside his house. "You felt it too," she said. "It wasn't a question." "Felt what?" Daniel asked, the change in the wind. "I used to be good at sensing when trouble was coming." "Old instincts die hard." Linda lit a cigarette and stared at the night sky. "Whatever you're hiding, Daniel, it's going to come to a head soon. I can feel it. You need to decide if you're going to run or fight." "I can't run forever," Daniel said. "Eventually I have to make a stand." "Then you better prepare," Linda said. "Because Haven's Rest has a lot of people like me. People who are tired of running. People who might be willing to fight if you give them a reason." Inside the house, Lirana placed her hand on her swollen belly. She felt the child move. A flutter of life that filled her with joy and terror. She knew the hunters were coming. She had known they would come from the moment she discovered the pregnancy. "Little one," she whispered in her musical voice, "you are going to change everything. Your father and I will protect you. We will make sure you have the chance to live, even if we do not survive to see you grow." The child moved again, responding to her voice. Elizabeth worked late in Gregory's clinic, studying her scans and making notes. She had documented everything about the pregnancy, knowing that this information could be vital. If something happened to her, to any of them, the galaxy needed to know that human-alien hybrids were possible and beautiful. "You're worried," Gregory said, bringing her coffee. "A miracle is happening," Elizabeth replied, "and I'm terrified that fear and hatred will destroy it before it has a chance to bloom." 2 weeks later, a coded message reached Daniel. It was from Peter Grant, sent through layers of encryption and routed through a dozen relay stations. "They're coming. Vexthar knows about Haven's Rest. He's bringing a fleet. You have maybe a week." "I'm sorry, Captain." "I tried to hold out. Amy did too. But they have ways of making you talk." "Get out of there, run, I'm so sorry." Daniel gathered Elizabeth, Lirana, Linda, and Gregory. "ESO." The week passed too quickly. Haven's Rest transformed from a sleepy frontier colony into a fortress. Linda proved her worth, organizing the colonists with military precision. It turned out that many of the 15,000 residents had military backgrounds. Former soldiers, pilots, engineers who had left military service for various reasons. They were tired of running, and when Linda explained what was coming, they chose to fight. Gregory turned his clinic into a command center. Maps of the colony covered the walls. Defense positions were marked in red. Evacuation routes for civilians in blue. Everyone had a role. Even the miners who had never held a weapon before were given crash courses in basic defense. "We have 22 working spacecraft," Linda reported to the group. "Most are civilian transports and mining vessels. Nothing built for combat. But Peter sent us specifications for improvised weapon systems. If we work fast, we can arm at least half of them." Peter Grant had not only warned them, but was actively helping from his location. Despite his capture and interrogation, he continued to send encrypted files with defensive strategies and technical modifications. His guilt drove him to risk everything to make amends. Daniel stood in what had become the war room studying the plans. Lirana sat nearby, her pregnancy now in its final weeks. Her crystalline skin glowed brighter than ever, pulsing with the life inside her. "You should evacuate," Daniel told her for the 10th time. "Elizabeth can go with you. Find somewhere safe." "There is nowhere safe," Lirana replied calmly, "and I will not run from my own people. They need to see me. They need to see what their fear has created. Elizabeth was dividing her time between preparing the medical bay for casualties and monitoring Lyrana's condition. The hybrid child was developing rapidly now. Elizabeth had never seen anything like it. The baby could come any day, Elizabeth warned. The development has accelerated in the last week. It's almost like the child knows what's coming and wants to be born before the danger arrives. Can that happen? Daniel asked. Can a fetus sense danger? Human babies can't, Elizabeth said. But this isn't a human baby. This child has Velinar genetics too. And the Velinar have sensory abilities we don't fully understand. It's possible. On the 5th day, Amy Brooks arrived. She came alone in a stolen shuttle, her face gaunt and her eyes haunted. She landed outside the colony and walked to Daniel's house with her hands raised. I told them, she said when Daniel met her at the door. I told Vexthar about Haven's Rest. I'm sorry, Captain. I'm so sorry. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he stepped forward and hugged her. You held out as long as you could. No one blames you. Amy broke down crying. I should have been stronger. I should have let them kill me. Then you couldn't help us now, Linda said, appearing from inside. And we need every skilled fighter we can get. You're a tactical officer, right? Good. We need someone who thinks like the enemy. Amy wiped her tears and nodded. Vexthar is a hunter. He's patient and thorough. He'll want to make an example of this place. He won't just attack. He'll try to break your will first. How? Daniel asked. Psychological warfare. He'll broadcast messages. Show you that resistance is hopeless. Offer terms that sound reasonable but aren't. He'll try to turn the colonists against you by making you seem like the threat. Can we counter that? Linda asked. Amy thought for a moment. Only if we can show the colonists something worth fighting for. Something that makes them believe this fight matters. On the 7th day, the Velinar fleet arrived. 5 ships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They were beautiful and terrible. Crystalline vessels that gleamed like jewels. Each one could destroy the colony with a single sustained bombardment. The fleet held position and broadcast a message. Vexthar's face appeared on every screen in the colony. He was handsome in the way all Velinar were, but his eyes were cold as deep space. People of Haven's Rest, he said. His voice was calm and measured. You harbor a criminal. The Velinar diplomat Lyrana has violated sacred laws and must face justice. Surrender her and the human Daniel Harper, and no harm will come to your colony. Resist and you will all share their fate. You have 12 hours to decide. The message repeated every hour. Some colonists began to panic. Why should they die for strangers? But Linda worked tirelessly, moving from group to group, reminding them why they had come to Haven's Rest in the first place. They had all run from something. Here was a chance to stand for something instead. Daniel knew they needed to respond. He couldn't let Vexithar control the narrative. He prepared a broadcast of his own, but Lyrana stopped him. Let me speak, she said. I am the one they fear. Let me show them why their fear is wrong. Daniel wanted to argue, but saw the determination in her luminous eyes. He nodded. Lyrana stood before the camera. She removed the concealing clothes she had worn for months, revealing her full crystalline form. Her pregnant belly was visible, glowing with inner light that pulsed with 2 heartbeats instead of 1. People of the galaxy, she began, her voice carrying harmonics that every Velinar would feel in their bones. I am Lyrana, daughter of Velinor Prime. I stand accused of the highest crime my people recognize, genetic contamination. But I tell you now, there is no contamination. There is only love. There is only life. She placed her hand on her belly. Inside me grows a child. Half human, half Velinar. A child that should not exist according to our laws. But this child does exist. This child is healthy and beautiful and represents a future my people are too afraid to imagine. Her voice grew stronger. For 10,000 years, the Velinar have lived by laws designed to keep us pure and separate. But purity is not strength. Isolation is not wisdom. I have learned from humans that diversity creates strength, that love transcends biology, that the future belongs not to those who hide behind walls, but to those who build bridges. She looked directly into the camera, speaking now to Vexithar and the High Council. I will not surrender. I will not apologize. I will not allow my child to be destroyed because you are afraid of change. If you want me, you will have to kill innocent people to reach me, and that blood will be on your hands, not mine. The broadcast ended. For a long moment, the colony was silent. Then slowly people began to emerge from their homes. They gathered in the central square. Someone started clapping. Then another. Soon hundreds of voices were cheering. "That," Amy said quietly to Daniel, "is how you give people something to fight for." But Vexithar was not moved. The 12-hour deadline passed. The Velinar fleet moved into attack position. Warning shots struck the empty ground near the colony, creating massive craters. The message was clear: surrender or die. "Battle stations," Linda ordered. The improvised defense fleet launched. 22 ships, most held together with hope and spare parts, rose to meet 5 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Daniel wanted to be up there with them, but his place was with Lyrana. She had gone into labor 3 hours before. The stress and fear had triggered the birth early. Now she lay in Gregory's clinic, Elizabeth and Gregory working frantically as contractions racked her body. "I can't do this now." Lyrana gasped between waves of pain. "Not now. Not with them attacking. The baby doesn't care about timing," Elizabeth said, trying to sound calm. "You're going to have to push soon." Outside, the battle had begun. The Velinar ships held back, not using their full power. Vexthar wanted to break the colony's will, not annihilate them instantly. But the colonists fought with desperate courage. Their ships darted and weaved, firing improvised weapons that barely scratched the crystalline hulls, but showed they would not surrender easily. On the bridge of his flagship, Vexithar felt something strange. A resonance in his mind, faint but growing stronger. He had felt something similar once before, during the solar flare crisis when reports said Lyrana and the human captain worked together. But this was different. This was more powerful. "Commander, should we increase attack intensity?" his second officer asked. Vexithar hesitated. That resonance in his mind was growing stronger, and with it came a feeling he had not experienced in his 2 centuries of life. Doubt. In the clinic, Lyrana screamed. The pain was overwhelming, but so was the joy. She could feel her daughter demanding to be born, pushing toward life with a strength that defied logic. "One more push," Elizabeth urged. "Come on, Lyrana." One more. Daniel held Lyrana's hand, feeling her crushing grip and not caring. "You can do this," he whispered. "We're almost there." Lyrana gathered every bit of strength she had left and pushed. The world seemed to slow down. Outside, the battle raged. Above, starships exchanged fire. In space, Vexthar felt that resonance grow to a peak, and then hope was born. The child emerged with a cry that was both human wail and Velinar harmonic. It was a sound that shouldn't exist, impossible but real. Elizabeth caught the baby, tears streaming down her face. "It's a girl," she whispered. "She's perfect, but something extraordinary was happening." Every Velinar within a light year felt it. The resonance exploded through their consciousness, not painful but overwhelming. It was a feeling of connection, of unity, of belonging to something larger than themselves. For the Velinar, who lived most of their lives in isolation within their own minds, it was shocking and beautiful. On his flagship, Vexthar staggered. His crew did the same. They all felt it, a new conscious. But Seraphis was not finished. She called witnesses, Velinar scientists who testified about the dangers of genetic mixing, historians who spoke of civilizations that fell after species boundaries broke down, medical experts who claimed that Hope's health now meant nothing if long-term problems emerged later. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Each day brought new arguments, new testimony, new evidence. Public opinion across the galaxy was split. Some saw Hope as a threat. Others saw her as a symbol of hope, as her name suggested. The turning point came during the 3rd week. The council agreed to allow Hope to be brought before them. Lyrana carried her. 10 years had passed since the trial at the Concordance. Hope Harper sat in her classroom on Unity Prime, a world that existed because of her. She was 10 years old now, though she looked slightly older due to her accelerated development. Her skin still shifted between human tones and crystalline shimmer, and her eyes glowed softly when she was excited or curious. The classroom held children from 7 different species. There were 3 human kids, 2 young Velinar, a Thrix child who clicked and buzzed cheerfully, and a small being from the aquatic Selenis species who sat in a specialized water tank. The teacher, a kind Velinar elder named Kira, was explaining galactic history. "Today we're studying the hybrid accord," Kira said, projecting images onto the classroom screen. 10 years ago, the galaxy faced a question that nearly tore us apart. Should different species be allowed to form families together? The answer changed everything. Hope tried to pay attention, but it was strange hearing her own story taught as history. She glanced at her friend Marcus, a human boy with dark skin and bright eyes who was doodling in his notebook. On her other side sat Alara, a young Velinar whose crystalline patterns were bright green and gold. Hope, would you like to share your perspective? Kira asked gently, all eyes turned to her. Hope felt her skin shimmer with embarrassment. I don't remember most of it. I was just a baby. My parents tell stories sometimes, but it feels like they're talking about someone else. That's natural, Kira said kindly. You didn't ask to become a symbol, but your existence opened doors for others. Today there are 47 confirmed hybrid children in the galaxy. Some are human Velinar like you. Others are different combinations. Each one is special. After class, Hope walked home with Marcus and Alara. Unity Prime was beautiful, with buildings that combined human and Velinar architecture. Gardens bloomed with plants from a dozen worlds. In the sky, ships came and went constantly, bringing visitors and traders. Do you ever wish you were just normal? Marcus asked as they walked. Just fully human or fully Velinar? Hope thought about it. Sometimes. But mostly no. Being both is hard, but it's also cool. I can understand Velinar harmonics that humans can't hear. I can process information faster than regular humans. And I can eat pizza, which apparently Velinar can't digest. Alara laughed, her light patterns dancing with amusement. Pizza is strange, but you make it sound appealing. They passed the central plaza where a statue stood. It showed a human and a Velinar holding hands with a small child between them. The inscription read, "Love knows no boundaries." Hope always felt weird seeing it. That child was supposed to be her, but the statue made her look heroic. She was just a kid who wanted to play games and avoid homework. At home, Daniel was cooking dinner. He had gray in his hair now and lines around his eyes, but he smiled when Hope entered. How was school? Weird, we're studying the hybrid accord. It's bizarre learning about your own life in history class, Daniel laughed. Welcome to being a living legend. It doesn't get less weird, I promise. Lyrana emerged from her study. She worked as an ambassador now, traveling across the galaxy to speak about unity and understanding. She had written a book that had become famous, The Space Between Stars, A Journey Beyond Species. It was required reading in schools on 50 different worlds. How's the new chapter? Daniel asked her. Difficult, Lyrana admitted. Her light patterns showed stress. I'm writing about the resistance we still face. There are many who believe the hybrid accord was a mistake. They call Hope and others like her mistakes abominations. Hope felt a familiar weight settle on her chest. She knew there were people who hated her for existing. She received messages sometimes, cruel words from strangers who thought hybrids were wrong. Her parents tried to shield her, but you couldn't shield someone from the whole galaxy. We knew it wouldn't be easy, Daniel said, pulling both Hope and Lyrana into a hug. Change never is. But look at Unity Prime. Look at what we've built. That's real. That matters. That evening, as Hope did homework in her room, her communication pad buzzed. It was a message from Peter Grant, her uncle in everything but blood. Peter had returned to engineering after the trial, and now designed ships that combined human and Velinar technology. Hey kid, his message read, built something new. Want to see it next week? It's a ship designed specifically for mixed crews. Has environmental controls for 7 different species. Your dad helped with the life support systems. Pretty cool, Hope smiled. Peter always sent messages that made her feel normal, like she wasn't a symbol but just his friend's daughter who he liked to spoil with engineering talk. A year passed. Hope turned 11. The galaxy continued to change, sometimes for the better, sometimes not. 3 more hybrid children were born. A human Thrix baby that shocked everyone with its unique biology, a human Selenus child who could breathe both air and water, and twins from a human Kethril union who seemed to exist partially in energy form. But with each new hybrid came renewed debate. Conservative factions across multiple species formed a coalition called the Purity Alliance. They argued that the hybrid accord had been a mistake. That species were losing their distinct identities. That chaos would follow. The Alliance's leader was a Velinar named Vexithar. Hope recognized the name from her parents' stories. He was the commander who had almost destroyed Haven's Rest, the one who had come to kill her before she was born. But something had changed in him. Vexithar was no longer hunting hybrids. Instead, he had become something unexpected, a historian. He traveled the galaxy documenting the changes, interviewing hybrid families, collecting data. His work was neutral, presenting both the challenges and benefits of the new reality. Hope met him when she was 12. He came to Unity Prime to interview her family for his comprehensive historical record. She felt nervous meeting the man who had once wanted her dead. Vexithar was old by Velinar standards, his crystalline skin showing faint cracks and his light patterns dim. But his eyes were sharp and thoughtful. "Hope Harper," he said when they met. His voice still carried that military precision. "I owe you an apology. When you were born, I felt a resonance that shook everything I believed. I wanted to destroy you because you proved me wrong." "I'm sorry," Hope didn't know what to say. This alien warrior was apologizing to her. "You didn't destroy me, though. You pulled back. Not because of nobility," Vexithar admitted. "Because of fear. I was afraid that destroying you would destroy something in myself. But over the years studying what happened, I realized that fear can lead to wisdom if you let it." He spent 3 days interviewing the family. He asked Hope about her life, her struggles, her friends, her dreams. He didn't treat her as a symbol, but as a person. When he left, he gave her a copy of his book in progress. "Read this when you're older," he said. "It's not finished yet, but I think you'll find it interesting. It's about how one small child changed the galaxy by simply existing." Hope turned 13, then 14. She grew taller, her features becoming more defined. She looked like both her parents and neither of them, a unique blend that made her beautiful in a way that was all her own. She decided she wanted to be an explorer, like her father. She applied to the Stellar Academy, a school that trained pilots and scientists for deep space exploration. The application asked about her species, and Hope hesitated before checking the box marked hybrid. Daniel had returned to space exploration. He commanded a ship called the Pioneer's Dream, a vessel with a mixed crew of humans, Velinar, Thrix, and others. Elizabeth Morris was his chief science officer, still researching hybrid biology and publishing papers that advanced the field. Amy Brooks commanded tactical, having earned redemption through years of service. When Hope was accepted to the academy, the whole family celebrated. Lyrana cried tears of joy. Daniel beamed with pride. Even Gregory and Linda, who had moved to Unity Prime to continue their work, came to the party bringing homemade cake. "You're going to do great things," Linda told Hope. The old intelligence officer had become like a grandmother to her, not because you're a hybrid, because you're you. Smart, brave, kind. The galaxy is lucky to have you. On Hope's 15th birthday, something unexpected happened. The Purity Alliance, which had been growing more vocal and aggressive, dissolved. Their members released a joint statement explaining that after years of watching hybrid children grow up healthy and happy, they could no longer justify their position. Change was no longer theoretical. It was real, and it was good. That same day, Seraphis, the prosecutor from the trial, published an article. In it, she revealed her own story. The love she had abandoned 200 years ago. The regret she had carried. She called Hope the bravest person I never met, and thanked Daniel and Lyrana for having the courage she had lacked. The article went viral across the galaxy. Thousands of people came forward with their own stories of loves denied, of choices made out of fear. A movement began calling for further reform of genetic purity laws. Hope read the article and cried. Not because she was sad, but because she finally understood the weight she carried. She wasn't just living her life. She was proving that a different future was possible. At 16, Hope entered the Stellar Academy. She excelled in navigation and xenobiology. She made friends easily, her unique perspective helping her understand different species. In 6 weeks after Hope's birth, the summons came. The Galactic Council, an organization that had not met in full assembly for nearly a century, was convening to address what they called the hybrid question. Daniel Harper, Lyrana, and their child were commanded to appear before representatives of over 300 species from across the galaxy. The trial would take place at the Concordance, an ancient space station that orbited a neutron star at the galaxy's political center. It was neutral ground, built thousands of years ago by civilizations that had long since disappeared. No weapons were allowed. No violence was permitted. Here, conflicts were resolved through words and law. "They're going to take her from us," Lyrana said, holding Hope close. The baby was growing quickly, already showing signs of advanced development. She could hold her head up, focus her eyes, and respond to both human speech and Velinar harmonics. Even if they don't kill us, they'll take her away for study. Not if we win, Daniel said, though he felt less confident than he sounded. Elizabeth had spent the last 6 weeks documenting everything about Hope's development. She had compiled medical records, genetic analysis, behavioral observations, and developmental milestones. It was the most complete study of a hybrid child ever created, because Hope was the first of her kind. The science is on our side, Elizabeth told them. Hope is healthy. She's thriving. There's no genetic instability, no signs of medical problems. If anything, she's developing faster and stronger than either a human or Velinar child would alone. Science won't matter if they've already decided we're guilty, Amy said darkly. She had been studying Velinar law and culture, preparing for the trial. Their genetic purity laws are thousands of years old. They're not based on science, but on philosophy and fear. The journey to the concordance took 3 weeks. Daniel, Lorena, Hope, and Elizabeth traveled on a human diplomatic vessel. They were accompanied by Kyle Turner, a human ambassador who had volunteered to represent humanity's interests. Kyle was in his 50s, silver-haired and sharp-minded, with years of experience navigating alien politics. The key is to make them see Hope as a person, not a problem, Kyle explained as they reviewed strategy. If we let this become about abstract laws and genetic theory, we lose. But if we can make them see her humanity, her innocence, we have a chance. She's not just human, Lorena pointed out. She's Velinar too. Exactly, Kyle said. And that's our strongest argument. She belongs to both our peoples. Neither side can claim exclusive right to judge her. The concordance was breathtaking. The station was a massive ring surrounding the neutron star, with sections devoted to each major galactic civilization. It could house 1 million beings comfortably. As their ship docked, Daniel saw vessels from species he had never encountered. Insectoid ships, energy beings contained in magnetic fields, crystalline craft, and stranger things still. They were escorted to quarters in the human sector. The rooms were comfortable but felt like a cage. Guards were posted outside, polite but firm. They were not prisoners technically, but they were not free to leave either. The trial began 3 days later in the Grand Assembly Hall. The room was enormous, with seating for thousands of delegates. At the center was a raised platform where the accused would stand. Surrounding it in tiers were the seats for the Galactic Council representatives. Daniel had never felt so small. He stood on the platform with Lorena beside him, Hope sleeping in her arms. Elizabeth and Kyle stood slightly behind. Across from them was the prosecution table, where Seraphis waited. Seraphis was a Velinar legal expert with a reputation for never losing a case. She was older than Lorena, her crystalline skin showing the faint lines that indicated centuries of life. Her eyes were hard and cold as she looked at the hybrid child. The chief arbiter called the assembly to order. He was a being from an ancient species called the Kethril, creatures of pure energy who communicated through controlled electromagnetic pulses that translators converted to speech. This assembly addresses the case of Lorena of Velinor Prime and Daniel Harper of Earth, the arbiter intoned. They stand accused of violating genetic sanctity laws that have governed civilized space for 10,000 years. The council will hear arguments from both sides before rendering judgment. Seraphis stood. Her voice was melodious but carried an edge of steel. Honored members of the council, what we face here is not merely a violation of law but a threat to the natural order itself. For millennia, our civilizations have prospered by maintaining species integrity. We do not mix because mixing leads to chaos. She gestured toward Hope. That child is an abomination. Not because of malice, but because she should not exist. Human and Velinar biology were never meant to combine. That they have done so represents either a dangerous accident or deliberate tampering with natural law. Seraphis projected genetic data onto the massive screens surrounding the assembly. The Velinar genetic purity laws exist for sound reasons. Our ancestors witnessed civilizations collapse when species intermixed without understanding the consequences. Genetic instability, cultural dissolution, the loss of identity that makes each species unique. She turned to face the assembly directly. If we allow this hybrid to exist without consequence, we set a precedent that will destroy us. Soon other species will mix. Ancient genetic lines will be corrupted. In our quest for novelty and sentiment, we will lose the diversity that makes the galaxy strong. We will create a homogeneous sludge of mixed genetics with no clear identity or purpose. Her closing was powerful. I do not ask for cruelty. The child should be placed in stasis for study, preserved but prevented from contaminating the natural order further. The parents should face appropriate consequences, exile for the human, corrective measures for the Velinar. This is not punishment but protection. Protection of the galaxy's genetic heritage. Many council members nodded. The argument was logical, appealing to both fear and tradition. Now it was humanity's turn. Kyle stood first, prepared to make the opening argument. But Daniel touched his arm. Let me speak first, Daniel said quietly. I'm not a lawyer or a diplomat. But I'm her father. Let me speak as her father. Kyle hesitated, then nodded. Daniel walked to the center of the platform. He looked up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at him. He felt terrified but forced himself to speak clearly. My name is Daniel Harper. I'm a human from Earth, 43 years old. I used to be a ship captain. Now I'm a father. That's all I am. Just a father who loves his daughter. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The prosecutor says hope is an abomination. She says my daughter should not exist. But I look at hope and I don't see an abomination. I see a miracle. I see a beautiful child who smiles when I hold her. Who cries when she's hungry? Who reaches for her mother's face with tiny hands? His voice grew stronger. You're all sitting up there deciding whether my daughter deserves to live based on laws written thousands of years ago. But laws aren't sacred. Laws are tools. And when a tool no longer serves its purpose, you change it. He looked directly at the Velinar delegation. Your genetic purity laws were designed to protect you. I understand that. But protect you from what? From change? From growth? From love? Because that's all Lorana and I did. We loved each other. And from that love came hope. Daniel's eyes swept across the assembly. Every species here started somewhere. You evolved, adapted, changed. Change is the nature of life. Refusing to change is death. Hope represents change, yes, but she represents the best kind of change. She represents the possibility that we don't have to be separate forever, that we can build bridges instead of walls. He returned to stand beside Lorana. Now Kyle stood, more prepared with legal arguments. The prosecution claims that hybrid children threaten genetic diversity, Kyle said. But this argument is fundamentally flawed. Genetic diversity is strengthened by mixing, not weakened. Earth's own history proves this. Our greatest periods of growth came when different human populations mixed and shared genes. He presented data on human genetic history, showing how isolation led to weakness while mixing led to strength. The prosecutor fears loss of identity. But identity is not solely genetic. It's cultural, experiential, chosen. Hope will learn both human and Velinar cultures. She will have twice the heritage, not none. Elizabeth spoke next, presenting her medical findings. Hope is not genetically unstable. She's not diseased or damaged. Her hybrid nature has actually given her advantages. Enhanced cognitive development. Stronger immune system. The ability to process information in ways neither species can alone.